Hello everyone, we're going to, in this video, just go through a couple of the questions from the exercise that we did in class today, because quite a few people were struggling with a few of them. So I'm going to go through two of the questions from the exercise, but first let's just recap how we're going to do these. So we're looking at solving linear equations when we're given a worded problem and we have to write the equation and then solve it. Let's just remember from the end of the last video, there are 4 steps for how we're going to do this, and I'm going to write them out. So the first step is to assign variables. We're going to read the question and we're going to say, what are the things that we're being asked to find? And for each one of those, we're going to assign a particular variable. We're then going to read the question again, and each sentence of the question we're going to turn into an equation. Sometimes there'll be a couple of different equations that we'll have to work with, sometimes it will be just one, but we're going to write an equation or equations based off the question. Our third step is then to solve the equation or equations that we've written. To find the values of our variables. And then our fourth step, which is very important to not forget about, is to answer the actual question. So look back to the question, read what information it actually wants us to give, and then write a sentence if we have to actually answer the question based off the solution that we found to our equations. Okay, so let's do a couple of questions. We are in exercise 7C of the Unit 2 Sadler book, and let's start with question 4, which a couple of people asked me to have a look at. So we're looking at question 4 here. A manufacturer sells a particular product for $40 per unit. So I would probably underline that, $40 per unit, that's important. The manufacturer's costs for producing the units consist of a fixed $5,000 plus a cost of $22 per unit. Okay, that's our next bit of important information. If the manufacturer produces and sells X units, find an expression in terms of X for the cost to the manufacturer for producing these X items. Okay, if we jump back to our 4 steps, we've actually, the question has done the first one for us. It's assigned the variables. It's told us that so we're doing question 4 here. It's told us that the number of units equals X. So that's the first variable that we've assigned. Now, we need to find an expression in terms of X for the cost to the manufacturer for producing these, it's not the screen, for producing these X items. So the cost to the manufacturer, that's going to maybe be another variable, so we'll write cost, and we'll assign that the variable C. Okay, the question is now asking us for step 2 of this process, writing an equation. That's what find an expression means. It means write the equation. So part A, let's write an expression for the cost for producing X units. So we're going to write the cost equals, and we're told in the question that the costs consist of a fixed $5,000, so $5,000, and then another plus a cost of $22 per unit. So plus a cost of 22 times X for every unit, for every one X that he produces, that's another $22, and then there's the 5,000 fixed. So this is our expression. Question B. Find the value of X for the manufacturer to at least break even. Assume that X must take integer values. Okay, that sentence in the brackets we'll come back to, but first, to break even, that means that his profits equal his cost. So let's first write an expression for his profits. Looking back in the question, the manufacturer sells a particular product for $40 per unit. In part A, we didn't use that information at all. Now it becomes important. So the manufacturer's profits are $40 for every unit he sells, or 40x. And we want to know when the profits are going to equal the costs. So we're now at step 2 of our process, and we're going to say that the total money he makes, the profits, have to equal the total costs involved. Okay, now we're up to step 3 in the process, solving the equations. So let's solve this. We're going to take this 22 and get rid of it from this side. So we're going to minus 22x from both sides. So we get 40x minus 22x equals 5,000. If I've got 40x's and I take away 22x's, then I've got 18x's remaining. 18x equals 5,000, and now I'm going to divide both sides by 18 to get x equals 5,000 divided by 18, which equals 277.8. We'll put that one into the calculator. Now we need to do step 4 of the process, answer the actual question. So the question was, how many units does he have to sell? And x must take integer values, which means it can only be a whole number. So if he sells 277.8 units, he'll break even. If he sells less than that, then he won't break even, and if he sells more than that, he will. So we need to round that up to the nearest integer value. So we'll answer the question by saying he must sell 278 units. Okay, let's do one more question. So let's do question 5 from the same exercise. A firm manufactures 2 types of chairs, the deluxe and the standard. In 1 week, the firm manufactures a total of 120 of these chairs, x of the standard and 120 minus x of the deluxe. So just translating that into words, that means that if there's 120 chairs in total, and there's x standard, then if you take the total minus the number of standard chairs, you'll get the deluxe, which is why they've used 120 minus x for the number of deluxe. Each standard chair requires 3 hours of work, and each deluxe requires 4 hours of work. Okay, questions A and B are both about finding an expression. So that's just doing step 2 of our process. Question A, find an expression in terms of x for the number of hours required to make the x standard chairs. Okay, let's just be clear about our variables. So we've got the number of standard chairs. The question told us was x. The number of deluxe chairs, the question told us was 120 minus x. Okay, and question A asked us to find an expression in terms of x for the number of hours required to make the x standard chairs. So let's make another variable, hours for the hours required to make a standard, to make all the standard chairs. We'll call that HS for hours standard. Okay. So the total number of hours, well, if it if it takes 3 hours of work for each standard chair, then the total number of hours would just be 3 times x, will be the total number of hours to make all the standard chairs. Question B, find an expression in terms of x for the number of hours required to make the 120 minus x deluxe chairs. So now we need the variable, the total number of hours for the deluxe chairs, and so we'll call that HD, hours for deluxe. And the hours for deluxe, well, the question said it took 4 hours for each one, so it's going to be 4, and the number of them was 120 minus x. So this is the number of deluxe chairs we're making, 120 minus x, and if I multiply that number by 4, which is the hour for each chair, I get the total number of hours for the deluxe chairs. So that was question A. This was question B. Now, question C. If the 120 chairs required 405 hours of work altogether, find how many of each type of chair were made. 405 hours of work altogether. So that means that the number of hours in total for standard and the number of hours in total for deluxe equaled 405. So that means that 3x, which was the total number of hours for the standard chairs, plus 120 minus x, which was the total number of hours for the deluxe chairs, that equals 405. Okay, so that was step 2, writing the equation. Now let's go step 3, solving the equation. I'm going to start by expanding that bracket. Okay, now I'm going to combine my like terms. So if I start with 3x's and I take away 4, I end up with negative x plus 480 equals 405. Now there's 2 ways I could proceed from here. I can either say, I need that x to be positive, right? So I can either say, let's move that x over to this side and get a to get a positive x, and then we'll minus 405 from both sides. Or I could say, let's just minus 480 from both sides, so that I'll get a negative on both sides of the equation, and then I can get rid of the negative. Either way is the same. I'm going to do the first option. I'm going to add x to both sides. So I'm just going to write this as 480 equals 405 plus x. And then that means that x equals 480 minus 405, which equals 75. Step 4 of our process, don't forget about it. Remember to answer the question. So that means that there are 75 standard chairs, and 120 minus x, so 120 minus 75 would mean 45 deluxe chairs. Okay, I'd like everyone to please try 2 questions, giving them a go based off those 2 questions that we've just answered together. So here they are. I'm going to upload them as a document to Connect as well, but if you want to just pause the video and give them a go while they're on screen now, those are the 2 questions that I would like you to try, and we'll go through them in class tomorrow.